Dad always used to say the only causes worth fighting for were the lost causes.
The Senator yield. No, sir, I will not yield.
Government is not the solution to our problem. Government is the problem.
You're listening to a Pyrolitical Pyrocast. Hello and welcome to the Pyrolitical Pyrocast this June 21st. I don't know about you, but in my hometown of Hurricane, Utah, it is a hot one today. I mean, a hot one. We're, at 108 right now. We've probably been up to 110 today. And it's hot and it's dry. And but that's not what we're going to talk about today. I just thought I'd mention it. Anyway, Thomas is out tonight. He is visiting with some family members, having a little bit of a reunion up at an amusement park in northern Utah called Lagoon. And I hope he's having a wonderful time. Thomas, if you're tuning in when you should be tuning out or tuning into your family, then hello, and hope you enjoy yourself up there. As a result, I mean, we're going to see how long I'm able to do this all by my lonesome. I usually have Thomas there to bounce off of, and so this will be a little bit different experience today, but we're going to go ahead and see what we can do. Today, I want to talk a little bit about the state of the welfare state and have a question. And not only welfare, this deals with a couple other areas, but has the hope of America been replaced with fear? Just think about that for a minute, folks. I want to talk about welfare a little bit because I recently had a conversation with some individuals that I think very highly of, and I value their input. They're working hard as business owners, trying to grow and serve and bless others' lives with through those services. And so I don't want to, demean anyone by my comments. It's just, this is kind of, I wanted to share a little bit about my true feelings here. Because both these individuals had gone through difficult times. One of them through school, went into a medical profession, and obviously that takes a lot of time, effort, and money. And so throughout the whole process of going through school, I mean, obviously there were Medicaid or Medicare. I always get the two confused. I guess it's Medicare. Was helping take care of medical bills, which they needed. They had some pretty severe cases they had to deal with. And then as well, food stamps, and I don't know what else, but helped to support them while they were going through school to help make ends meet. And this other one, having a few years ago, had to declare bankruptcy and is in the midst of trying to rebuild himself, changing professions and starting over. Both great individuals, and I don't mean to discount anything in my comments today, but we had a little conversation about a week ago concerning the topic of welfare, and I didn't want to badger anyone, so I didn't push the subject, but it's been on my mind a lot since then, because the obvious thing that they had said is, well, it's there, and so because it's there to help people, we need to take advantage of it. We need to use it. And I can totally understand that argument. I totally get it. I get it. It is there, and yes, it's there, and taxpayer money is paying for it. And I shared one thing though, because I benefited from it once, at least once. But with our first child, we went to the hospital, newly married, and, really naive about what options may be out there. We got it, Medicare, that paid for the doctor. But as, I at least trying to be what I felt like was necessary as a self-reliant individual, I was seeking ways to be able to pay it back. Can you put it on a payment plan? Can you do whatever? So, I'm grateful that you covered it, but that's no one else's burden but mine. Was my thought process. And so, is there a way that I can help pay for this or cover it? And the answer was no, there's no way. And so maybe there is some way that I'm not aware of. I'd love for someone to leave some comments here in the video, if they know of some way. But I just thought this is, it really galled me to think that there was this thing I was benefiting from, but I had no way of being able to recompense. I had no way of being able to pay it back and feel like I was right with the world. I was just indebted to nameless faces, right? People who had contributed to governmental largesse, and I got the benefit of it. And so that always, some of you may be listening and saying, well, why do you have a problem with that? You just, they gave you some free money. That's great. You have your kid here. That's awesome. And they're healthy. And I don't discount that. I think that's amazing. I'm grateful. I'm grateful for that. But I guess, that was the first instance. And then I had later, when we all encountered the devastation that occurred during the Great Recession in 2008, and many people lost their homes and or livelihoods. I did. I lost 3 homes, 2 rentals, and our personal home to foreclosure. And the following year, we lived on, we lived on a total of $6,000 gross income. That was the entire amount that came to me over the course of the year. I was, self-employed and struggling to keep things afloat, and that's all that came in. I was, and so I did receive many benefits from individuals, and although those programs were out there, I don't know, maybe I just have a jaded view of governmental welfare programs, but to me, a governmental welfare program is something which, although it gives to those who would seem in the greatest need, it also serves, and it can be a great stepping stone for those individuals so they can get beyond, but it also can serve as a crutch. It can serve as something which keeps them in their state of wherever they are, so they don't grow beyond. Now, and that's not saying that everyone does. I'm just saying there could be a tendency to, and there's no one. You're not when you receive government handouts, it's not something that you're given, and like I indicated, you can't necessarily repay it. They don't think that anyone could repay it. That's why you're on the program. So there's no function to be able to do that other than paying more taxes. Okay, understood. But who is the person that gives you that money? Is it the person at the welfare office? That's the person you talk to. Is it the person back in Washington, D.C.? That's the person who may authorize the payments. Is it the president? He's the one that signs the bill. Is it your neighbor? Partially. And their neighbor? Partially. And their neighbor and their neighbor and their neighbor. See, it takes the human nature of charity, in my mind, and totally emasculates it. Sure, there's charity. We're doling out money to individuals who may be in need or may not. Maybe they're gaming the system, maybe not. I'm not saying everybody does. Most people don't, I don't think. But what happens is you have a false philanthropy, a false charity, as Bastiat would put it, where the government then gives and helps try to make everyone else in society feel good because they have taken their their taxes and whatnot, and they have put them to a good use. They're helping their fellow men. Well, that's really interesting, because what would that individual do to help their fellow men, their actual fellow men, their neighbor, their friend, their relative, their associate, if you hadn't taken that money from them? Now, I don't want to blame anyone who's benefiting from one of these programs. I don't want to call them heretics. I don't want to call them a bad individual. That's not my intent here. If anything, I would like to raise the question about the program itself, its validity and effectiveness. Because for generations, we've had people talk about how you have generational welfare. People that just get stuck in that system and it's just comfortable. I myself have witnessed the effects on several people. I had an individual that I was a close friend with who his wife was getting Social Security disability payments, and he had hurt his back. And he would talk about how he'd hurt his back, but I'd see him do some amazing things. And I'm like, I don't think a guy who's really hurting his back, maybe he was 100% correct and he just would ignore it and do these things that, would have hurt any normal person's back. I don't know. I don't know for sure. But what I do know is that I saw him over time, even though he would work here and there and try and earn a living. The focus was always, from his wife and other relatives, the focus was always, okay, well, you got to reapply to get this Social Security disability income. Reapply. And as soon as he got that, done. No more effort. Wasn't needed. All the effort that was expended before, I'd hear him talk about starting businesses and getting out and doing things and being productive. And now, as far as I'm aware, complete recluse. He doesn't need to interact with anyone else other than the minimal amount. So he doesn't. Stays at home. He may talk to one or two people. They go to the store and buy what they need. But there's no reason to go out and work. There's no reason to interact because some nameless individual or group is paying me to not interact with you anymore. So what does that matter? Maybe it doesn't matter. Here he was trying really hard and I think in some ways growing. Now that growth has been turned off. A couple weeks ago, we talked at length about pain. About pain and how it impacts an individual's decisions, how it impacts how people work, and how the world in general is focused on eliminating pain. Every day there's some new, painkiller out there. Epidemics of people abusing opioids and other drugs that remove that pain. They take us from the state where we experience pain and give us a sense of euphoria. Even alcohol dulls those senses so that you don't have to experience the pain in your life. You can put it off for a night and wake up even more upset and miserable. But man, you had a good night and you didn't have to think about it for a little while. Government does the same thing as those drugs. We see people in pain and try to imagine ways to fix them. to remove that pain from them, to make things better. And that's just human nature. I understand that. I get that. We want to make people's lives better. I do every day. I'm looking for ways to help my wife's day go better, my kids, friends. When I see them in hurt or lacking something, I feel inside my heart I want to help them. I want to help them get beyond that. But there's a difference when that yearning for helping becomes systemic instead of individual. There's a difference when you set a random or arbitrary level of criteria in order to classify an individual as qualifying or not qualifying for a level of support versus an individual who sees someone struggling and tries to lend not only monetary help, but hopefully emotional support, friendly, advice or influence where they can to help that individual. And so I see this scenario or system where we've taken that which was probably the most amazing thing about our wonderful country, and over the last 70, 80 years, we have just undercut it and gutted it, and we've removed it. And now it's no longer important for us to worry about our neighbor. You don't need to do that because, if they're really having a hard time, they can just go to the welfare department like everyone else who's in trouble. Then we don't need to get to know them. Or once they get on their welfare, they don't need to get to know us anymore because they're comfortable. They're receiving enough in order to take care of their needs. Now, again, remember, I said, I don't think that this is everyone. Okay? I don't think this is everyone who's ever used the system. I don't think that this is everyone that's on the system. I just think that it's the nature of the system to corrupt one and to degrade individuals and their relationships with others. So while there may be a lot of people who find that they benefit from it, there are, I would say, many, many more who have their life, whether they know it or not, negatively impacted. At first, they may think that they're just fine. But that person who was just given largesse from government, they were given their welfare check, Social Security check, whatever, because they received that, you took away some of their pain. And because you took away some of their pain, they will now not make the efforts that they would have given the pain, which would cause them to strive to be a cancer researcher and finally come up with a definitive cure for cancer. There would, or they were the ones who would figure out how to actually make high-speed transit work really well in the United States. They would be the ones who would help us be able to make a space elevator. I don't know. There's an infinite number of possibilities. And so you could say, yeah, well, Randy, you're spouting all this stuff, but that person, we don't know that they were going to do anything of significance. And I say, you know what? You're right. And now you've ensured that they probably won't. Now, I started this talking a little bit about my own experience. That year after we lost our homes, we were, like I said, we made $6,000. Now, fortunately, we had some relatives who had gone away, and we were able to take care of their home for them for 2 years. And so we didn't have to pay rent. We still had to pay for the power. We had to pay for gas. We had to pay for all those essentials. And we lived on next to nothing. But I'll tell you what happened. Miracles happened. First and foremost, I learned, and I believe truly started to understand why Thomas Jefferson said that we needed to have a Georgic society. Now, he said that because he felt like people who were tied to the earth as their means of production would not only be good stewards, but they would also be better at preserving liberty for themselves and those around them, because anything that happens legally impacts the property holder. That's why the founders didn't think that everyone should vote, but only those who held property, because those who paid property tax were directly impacted by the decisions of government. And while someone who may rent or someone who may be a tenant may also be impacted, they do not see it as readily as someone who has to live off the land, so to speak. And I saw this because we had this amazing plot that our relatives had cultivated. And we grew some amazing heads of romaine lettuce, huge, delicious, sweet, succulent beets, 42-pound watermelons, corn, amazing corn, cassava melons, zucchini out our ears. My wife came up with so many interesting ways to eat zucchini, and they were all delicious. Pumpkin and peppers and summer squash, and you name it, tomatoes by the bushelful. We were so blessed, and I spent more time in that garden than I think I ever have, because I've had gardens lots of years, but that year it was really important to me. I could plant, and I had time. I was working on other things, but I had time that I could dedicate to that garden. And I'm sure that helped, as well as the plot. And I think a little help from on high as well blessed us. We probably ate 90% of what we ate that summer, all came out of that garden. And it really helped me understand what Thomas Jefferson meant, because I really started to feel how important it was with us being so tied, all our food coming out of this garden, we were so tied to it, and the very thought of government meddling in somewhere that could impact my ability to grow or produce, it was startling, it was terrifying. So the further we take people from that, make them tenants, make them serfs, give them enough to subsist so that they don't feel enough pain to get up and learn and grow, the more that we do that, the worse off I think society becomes. Not because it's evil to help people, but because the nature of that help, like I said, it's systemic. It's part of a system. It's not part of an individual's relationship. That's what we need. Addiction has been found more and more to be more of an issue of relationships and connection, true connection, not Facebook connections, not Twitter feed followers, but true individual one-on-one connections. And when we lack those connections, we become addicted. We go away into our own little thing. We seek for that pleasure, which may be very harmful to us. So we need those relationships. And I just think that these programs upend that. They remove the need for the intimate relationships that we find when we work with a business partner, when we're struggling with someone who we care about in order to make sure that we have enough to make ends meet. So again, for those who may just be tuning in, this is not about individuals who benefit from these programs. I think the programs themselves are the problem. They're the problem. Because they take away your and my ability. Okay, let me rephrase that. They don't take away my ability to give charity. They don't take that away. They minimize my ability to give charity because I already have to give up so much to the government for the government to dole it out. So, and I remember reading a quote when they were initially passing a Social Security program, back in the 30s, where one legislator said, I'm trying to remember the exact words, but it was something to the effect of, elderly people or people who of senior years should not have to rely on charity for their support. Interesting. Charity is a process by which both the giver and the receiver are ennobled. They're strengthened. They gain a relationship. They gain a trust for one another. What does the welfare program do? And some of you will say, well, that's Social Security. That's not welfare. Okay. So you paid in to Social Security. And you did. All those years that you were working. Great. That's fantastic. You paid in all those years. And now you're trying to get it out. But the problem is you're not pulling your money out that was placed in an account and invested and matures. You're pulling out of an ethereal box, that exists only because the government continues to extract. And so the big contention is, well, we have these baby boomers. There are a lot more of them than there are workers today, or as the baby boomers continue to retire and take advantage of Social Security. And so that's creating a bigger and bigger burden on the next generation. And why is it a bigger burden on the next generation? If you paid in to Social Security, because, some people think it's crazy to call the Social Security a Ponzi scheme, but that's it. You take money from one person, you put it in your black box investment, and then you pay a past investor from that investment, right? And if you're stealing from the principal to make payments, then you're running a Ponzi scheme. And that's all that Social Security is it's just saying we're going to guarantee one generation on the backs of the next. Now, I know we moved along. We started talking about welfare, and now we've got onto Social Security. And again, I don't fault anyone who's bought into the system because it's been foisted on them and forced on them for generations. The system has been built in such a way that it doesn't give many options for individuals. Even if they wanted to get out of the system, it's difficult to, if impossible. So what do we do? What do we do about it? Well, I mean, most people would say, well, we've got to change policy, right? We've got to go change things in Washington, D.C. And I say no. That's not the first step. The first step is you and me having this conversation. The first step is each one of us looking inward and saying, okay, what do I do? What can I do? How should I act? How can I react? How can I make positive change, forward momentum, forward movement? How can I make that happen? And so we look within, and that helps us find ways to work without. To say, okay, maybe there's another way around, or yeah, this is painful, but maybe I won't go and do this, or maybe I'll talk with a friend, a neighbor, a religious leader, or whoever, and ask them for help first. Because I get it. People need help. I've already admitted. Okay, I didn't finish telling my story. Let me go back. So we lived out of this garden, and that was great. But and this relative, they also had an amount of food storage, and they had some older food storage, and we used mostly the older food storage, and there was weevily wheat or rice. And we'd have weevily rice, extra protein, right? My angel wife would pick out all the weevils, and it was fine. It was fine. Is it the most attractive thing to eat? No. But we were fine. Now, at some point, we had some neighbors who, and some church individuals of the same religion, same church, who came over to visit, and they saw the state of our cupboards, which were quite bare. And they came over individually, and they basically shoved our cupboards full of food, and then asked us to, basically be able to receive additional charity from that. And so we're grateful for that. We are so grateful for that. The difference in my mind is that program from that church allowed us to not only benefit and be helped in that time of our need, but it wasn't like the birth of our first child. There was a way to pay it back. Maybe not directly, but I could help pay. I could donate into the system. I could make donations on a regular basis. So as we had means, we could help not necessarily pay back, but to pay it forward, to say, okay, well, this benefited us, so we're going to help pay it forward. And it wasn't a nameless, faceless individual. They were individuals that I knew, because I saw most of them on a regular basis when I went to church on Sunday. I could see who was blessing me. I could see the individuals who took interest in and notice of me. I had to talk with them individually. I had to live with them knowing the state of our finances and where we sat. Just our lives were laid bare, basically. But that was painful. But like I said, it's the pain that helps us grow. Without that pain, if we start to feel pain and we take the ibuprofen immediately, sure, the pain goes away, but so does the growth. I grew so much as I went through that process, as I learned and grew, and the amazing gratitude that I had for those individuals. I didn't ask for it. I didn't necessarily want it. I didn't go seeking it. But because it's never an easy thing when you need something to go and ask for it and receive. But there's a fundamental difference. Philanthropy versus false philanthropy. Individuals and religions seeking to better other individuals' lives versus a nameless, faceless bureaucracy with arbitrary rules and regulations that help decide whether or not you qualify. And if you qualify, you may qualify for life and never be able to have that removed from you. That doesn't sound like a recipe for growth to me. Now, is it easy? No, it's not easy. To go without it? Absolutely not. It's never easy. It's very difficult. But that's where growth happens. All of the major innovations that have happened in life, they didn't come because the individual was, just had it easy their whole life. Even if they had it easy, they probably had to stress and struggle over an idea or concept, or trying to refine it before they finally got to a point where this is something we can take to market. I mean, I look at individuals like I just recently read the biography of Elon Musk, who I think anyone who pays attention to what he's doing has to admit, whether you like him or not, he is revolutionizing multiple industries. I was speaking with my wife a little bit about, we were talking about how all these things that we benefit from dealing with internet banking, or digital banking. And those did not exist before Elon Musk decided to change the financial market. X.com was supposed to be the first completely full-service online bank. The name PayPal.com won out, and now we have digital banking. I mean, we just take it for granted, but the fact that we can deposit a check by taking a picture of our check with our phone and send that in, and the bank, accepts it. I'm still working on being able to take pictures of cash and deposit that in my account. I don't know if that's ever going to happen. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. So he revolutionized, very not single-handedly, but partly because of his vision, he revolutionized the finance industry, and now he's trying in a very real way to revolutionize both the space industry and the automotive industry. And I think he's making waves, and he's making money, and he's making things change. So love him or hate him, like what he's doing or not, he's, I believe, a force for change and growth in all those industries. And the interesting thing to me was, his growth when he was growing up. He didn't really get along with his dad. He doesn't even want his kids to meet his dad because of the relationships there. When he was going to school, he was kind of a nerdy kid, I guess. And so he had a couple times where he had bullies that they kind of targeted him, and they were trying to make his life miserable. And, did that directly impact whether or not he made electric cars? Maybe not directly, but I think it helped develop his gumption and his character, his drive, because, he had to fight through that. It wasn't just an easy peasy, like everyone loves me, and so now I'm going to go and change the world. No, that story never happens. You never see that as a movie because it's lame and nobody likes it. Everybody would be bored and they would ask for their money back. They want to see the journey of the hero, where the individual is afflicted with some malady, some crisis, and they work steadily to overcome it. That's what sells in the theaters, because that's what people want to see. They want to see that growth, that overcoming of impossible odds. And I think that's what helped Elon Musk gain what he needed to do to be successful in the areas that he's in, and just continue to drive to make it happen. Now, not only that, I'm sure there are other things, but I thought it was interesting that there were these times in his life where he had some major pains, major obstacles he had to overcome. And then since then, I also just finished reading Steve Jobs' biography, and there was some similar stuff. He had to come to terms with a lot of different things in his life, dealing with the fact that he was adopted and anyway, overcoming some of these hurdles. And then, once he overcame them, he had a great drive to really change things in the marketplace, and not just accept things the way they were or make compromises. I mean, he was to the point where obviously lots of people thought he was crazy and he was hard to deal with, because he would come into the office and he could take, a state of very peaceful state and just turn it into an uproar, as he said everything was awful and whatnot. But he used that as something to be able to incentivize individuals to grow and change and do more than they thought they could. And so I think those are, and Elon Musk is much the same way, where he tries to drive individuals to excel. Both Steve Jobs and Elon Musk, I saw that as a similar thing in their biographies. And you don't excel if you think everything is okay. If you think everything is hunky-dory, then there is little need to grow. I mean, I even feel that in my own life. I'm self-employed. I have my own businesses, and I work at those businesses, but I can still, even though there's lots to do, I can reach states of contentment where it's like things are going good. And in those states, I find the times where I become the least productive because I rely on past successes for today's contentment instead of continually striving for growth. But it's when that pain comes down, when all of a sudden you're like, well, you know what? I didn't work as hard this month as I did last month. And so my paycheck's not as big. Well, that'll hurt. So let's go and let's work harder. So again, my indictment is not against individuals that benefit from these programs, whichever they may be, welfare or Social Security or whichever. My point is that it is not to be expected in a civilized society that a civilized society will take care of everyone that's there. You know, you have a lot of people who want to talk about, well, I watched this video recently by Kyrgyzstan. They do some fantastic animated videos talking about different scientific concepts, and they were talking about the new age of automation, and talking about how as machines continue to take over more and more roles, individuals will have less and less to do. And one of their conclusions was that we need to look at a basic universal median or base minimum income to just provide for everyone. And right there, you want the machines to win over mankind? That's the answer. You give everybody a baseline standard. They already have a baseline standard. It's 0. It's fine. People can make 0, and they can still figure out how to make it. Like I said, it's not easy. It's not easy, but it's not. We don't succeed just because the way is easy. We excel when we have trials and tribulations and difficulties that we have to overcome. So, again, this is not an indictment on individuals who benefit from these programs. This is an indictment on the programs. Their lack of individuality, their lack of a connection. We need to find a way to be able to throw them off. So many people are benefiting from these programs, you know, that the more they dole out, the more they feel justified in continuing. And the more that they continue, the further they grow, and the worse the economy and environment gets. The economic environment. Welfare, the only jobs that any welfare program creates are governmental jobs doling out money. There was even something like, not workman's comp. I'm thinking of benefits that you receive from government when you, I can't think of the name. Anyway, where you lose your job and they give you a median amount of income. So unemployment insurance. Even there was a study in, I can't remember which country exactly. It was a Scandinavian country where they looked at, because they extended the, and I remember these figures from, it was back in like 2009, because a lot of these different, 2009, 2010, because they were talking about extending unemployment benefits beyond the 12-month mark that they had them at and moving them to 24 or 48 months. And with the idea that we need to give these people longer to find jobs. And as they studied it, they found that the job or the rate at which individuals found jobs became significantly higher in their last month or two of benefits, the majority of them at the 12th month. Why? Why didn't they find them earlier? I mean, people did find them earlier, but the vast majority waited until the very end. Why? Because if I lost my job and I have a guaranteed income for so many months, yeah, as long as I go through the motions, then sure, I'll go through the motions and I'll continue to get money from the government, and that's fantastic. And then I can turn around and I'll find a job when I need to. Obviously, that's not the intent of the program, but that's what it fosters. Giving an individual 12 months does not ensure that they're going to do much other than just go through the motions of finding a job. If they're comfortable, again, this comes down to the level of comfort versus pain, right? If you make it painful because you say, you know what? Sure, you're unemployed, you got fired, great. Okay, you got a month, we'll give you something because it was unexpected. Get on the ball and figure out where you're going, or not at all. You know, I had an employee once who I cared for. He was a good guy. I enjoyed having him in the office. He was witty, but he was lacking. He was lacking in a couple areas, and so I paid another employee to train this employee, and so they were taking some of this other employee that was very productive was taking some of their time away from making money for the company, and instead was trying to train this other individual. And it just wasn't working. And so I had this idea in my mind that if I continued to kind of coddle them along, continue to pay them, and just work with them every once in a while, you know, try and help them along, that they would be able to overcome it. Not so. In fact, over the course of, you know, this was before the bubble burst and this company basically tanked, and I had to let all my 13 employees go. But this individual was the only individual over the course of any of my employees' time working with me that ever asked me for a raise. But yet, his work was not, I mean, it was subpar, super subpar. And so, you know, here I am thinking, okay, you know, I can't validate this individual's efforts because they're not making it. You know, I'm still working with them, and you know, it's to try and get their quality up. So I'm like, no, we're not going to raise your wage. I paid pretty good, I felt, and you know, I had let him set his wage when he came on. I did with all my employees. Stupid thing for me to do, but I did at that point in time. I said, well, how much do you want to make? And he set the number. So I paid him that. And so, but he was the only one that had ever asked for a raise. And anyway, I kept him on, even though I realized that things were difficult and he wasn't coming along as fast as I would like to see him grow and change and become better. You know, I eventually had to fire him, just like I had to get rid of everyone else that I had. But the thing I needed to do was to fire him like 18 months before I had to fire everyone else. Not only would it have saved me 18 months of income that I paid him, but he did end up learning the lesson that he needed to learn. Because, I mean, not that his work was all shoddy, but there was difficulties in his work and also his work ethic. You know, I think as an employer, you want to see people that are working hard, right? And I think as I would look in over people's shoulders, I saw him just doing whatever on the internet, probably more than anyone else. So there was all this, from my perspective as an employer, I had 18 months of essential waste, right? Not completely, but a bunch of it. And so as a result, I put off his growth for 18 months, where, although, again, it's not fun to be fired, but he received the growth that he needed to receive when that happened. My life as well, my second job, I worked in a hardware store, and I was the cleanup guy. So I'd come in at night, and I'd sweep the floors, mop the floors. I'd, you know, take care of all the different things that need to be cleaned up, the bathrooms and whatnot, before the store would close. And I started getting sloppy. I mean, I got the job there because I had two sisters that had worked there, and they were fantastic. And I was young and dumb, and I got lazy. And the best thing that happened to me was that the manager of the store took me aside one day, and he said, you know what? It's just not working out. I've talked to you about this a couple times. You're not doing what we want, so you're gone. And I'm like, well, when? He's like, well, now. And I've gone back to that manager and thanked him several times for doing that for me, because it really helped me understand that I needed to up my game. I needed a better work ethic. I needed to do what was necessary to get things done. And I wasn't at that point in time. I was just gliding along doing the very least that I could. I mean, they asked me to paint the bathroom, and I did. I painted the bathroom. I thought I did a really good job. But I hadn't taken anything off the shelves and painted the shelves. I mean, I'd never really painted an area anyway, but to this day, at least the last time I talked with the manager, he said he had left that there to serve as an example for employees. Don't do this. So I just painted all the walls around the shelves and left the shelves exactly how they sat. Shoddy workmanship. I know. I'll own it. It was shoddy workmanship. But it was the connection with him and him being willing to fire me to give me pain that allowed me to grow and learn a better work ethic. So what have I been talking about this whole hour? Here we are, 7:51, and I've just been rambling for an hour. So bear with me, we're winding down. But here's the point. Here's the point I've been trying to make. I don't, or I haven't been trying to say any of these things to be mean to individuals. People are out there, they're benefiting from these programs, and for all purposes, they may feel like they need them, and that's fine. It's not their fault. The fault is mine and everyone else who continues to support programs like that, rather than turning around and taking care of people who actually need it. We have the responsibility, I believe, to help all of our fellow men, be that Christian or Muslim or Jewish or Hindu or Buddhist or whoever. That's our responsibility individually. It's not the government's responsibility. We don't have the ability to push that responsibility onto government. It's our responsibility. And as long as we continue to try and push it to government and just say, well, they'll take care of the people who need it, then we don't grow as much as we need to, and the other individuals don't grow. Can you imagine what it would be like if an individual was down on their luck and all of a sudden a wealthy individual just took up their case and said, here, I want to help you, but not just I want to give you money. I don't want to give you a handout. I want you to be my mentor, or not my mentor. I want to mentor you, or I want you to work as in my business or whatever. That individual connection. So all of a sudden, this person goes from not being just down on their luck, but they go to, oh wow, now I've got an opportunity to grow and learn from someone who I know and respect. They're my neighbor. I grew up in the same town as them, and they were successful individual. Whatever. I think the current system takes away opportunities for that. Now, I'm going to go a little bit further here and say we've had a lot of uproar about minimum wage. Another government program, as far as I'm concerned, where the government says you have to pay this individual X amount. That's ludicrous. That is ludicrous. McDonald's was never created for careers. McDonald's was created for people who could work a stinking system, and they didn't have to have any training. Okay, McDonald's is not supposed to be employing people who really want a career path. Sure, you might be able to become manager, but they each have one or two managers, for a store or a restaurant. Give it up. Minimum wage is not going to solve anything. You increase the minimum wage and you just increase the cost of everything across the board because everyone has a little bit more money, so the stores can afford to do it. It's economics. It's economics. I mean, you look at that in a microcosm and see overnight how that's what happens. I could give you an example. I'm running low on time here, but Guam, I believe, if I remember right, there was on the island of Guam, all of the military personnel received like $1,000 bonus for the year. So they go into the stores and immediately all the prices were higher because they knew all of the military individuals got an extra bonus check. Did it help them? Not really, because then the price didn't drop after that, or very little. So, it's just, that doesn't work. Just giving more money doesn't solve the problem. Minimum wage has really eliminated apprenticeships in our country. We used to be able to go to someone and say, I'd like to apprentice to you. I'd like to learn to be an electrician. I'd like to learn to be a carpenter. I'd like to learn to be an IT professional. I mean, that really hasn't happened too much in the IT industry, but it could. And you'd employ them at a lower rate so that they could learn and you could afford their inexperienced services until they got to a point where, you know what, you're doing great. You're coming on full time and now you're trained and you understand it. Or you can go off and do your own thing and you're a trained, certified individual that has these skills. Minimum wage removes that. We don't need higher minimum wage. We need no minimum wage. We need no minimum wage. We need no welfare safety net. We need to get rid of all those. I mean, you think healthcare is in a mess? It's in a mess because the government's involved and has been since the 60s at least. Managed care. They're trying to manage every area of your care, and it doesn't work. The red tape just makes things more expensive. So it's this convoluted mess. The only way we're going to get out of it is to start stripping those things off and rolling back those changes until we get to a pure free market where individuals work with one another. Charity is a one-on-one relationship with individuals. And so, anyway, to get fully back around as we're running out of time here, that's what we need to do, is we need to have relationships again. Not to indict anyone who's benefiting from any of those programs. You just need to go and bless one another's lives through your efforts, through your labor, or through employment. However you're going to do it, you need to go through and try to help other individuals. Government cannot do it. It cannot do it properly and cannot do it effectively. It just removes pain, which stops innovation and stops growth. The world, as amazing as it is less of a world, less fantastic of a world than it would be without all that government largesse. I guarantee you. The government, or not the government, but the world of the future was always deemed as being this amazing place where we'd have flying cars and people would be living on the moon and wherever, and we've lost all that innovation, or the amazing amount of innovation that we probably would have gone beyond that. I think. That's my own thing. I don't have anyone else saying that. That's just my own thing. I think we would be far beyond that if we had gone and not gone down the route of welfare statism, nanny statism. They're two diametrically opposed sides of a coin. You can't have one or the other. You have to have one or the other. You can't have both. And so if we want innovation, I say get rid of welfare. Remove it completely. Roll back the programs. And I think you'll find more and more people that do more and more amazing, great, fantastic things. Way beyond your wildest dreams. Why? Because the pain that they feel drives them to positive change. And the change that they create will benefit you and everyone else in this world. Thank you for listening to my diatribe for 1 hour on the Pyrolitical Pyrocast. Join us next week. Thomas will be back, and we'll be back in full force. And have a wonderful, wonderful day, and I hope it's not too hot there. Stay cool. Thank you.